Perfect. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Cheryl to do our opening today to kick us off. Over to you, Cheryl.
Well, hi. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be with you again. This is my second time meeting with you all. But I'm glad that I recognize some of the faces here from last time. On behalf of the United Way, I want to welcome you to this meeting that we're having. And I also want to take the time to acknowledge that United Way Healthy Aging is coming to you from the traditional ancestral unceded territories of the First Nations of British Columbia, on which we gratefully work and gather. I myself am coming to you from the ancestral traditional unceded territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt people, otherwise known as Victoria. So please feel free to acknowledge the lands you're joining us on today in the chat. And I think it's an important thing that we do. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Nicole, who's going to do all this agenda housekeeping stuff.
Thanks, Cheryl, for that beautiful opening. And as I mentioned, I'm in Ottawa, joining you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. But HelpAge actually works right across Canada. So I always like to take a chance as well to acknowledge the, diverse, varied and special lands that our work takes us to right across the country of many First Nations, but other Indigenous peoples as well. So for today, looking at how we'll be together for the next hour and a half, welcome and keeping check. Pretty much through that, we'll do a quick Zoom reminder in a minute. But wanting to begin by looking back at what we heard last time, because it really, it was the determining factor for our theme tonight, which is captured in our third agenda item there, social prescribing. And that's why Bobby Sins is with us today. She's going to talk about social prescribing, what that is, how it relates to perhaps our digital learning programs. I will get into the why in a minute or two. So it's Bobby who's really going to spend a lot of time as our guest speaker today doing some of the knowledge sharing on that topic. And then as always in the second half of our meeting, we have breakout rooms. But before we go to breakout rooms, we have to take a couple of minutes to acknowledge Maggie, who is actually going to be leaving the United Way and leaving our program because she's accepted a new career opportunity, which is wonderful and very exciting. We're just sad to see her go and wanted to make sure that everyone who's been part of this digital learning journey has the chance to recognize and thank Maggie for all her hard work as well. So I thought if I put it on the agenda, I can share this news up front, break it to you gently, so that we can put ourselves together in time to thank Maggie properly in about 45 minutes or so. So that's how we'll be spending today. Zoom housekeeping, we're all old hat at this by now. But thank you all. Everyone popped in right away with cameras on. We love to see your faces. We'll ask you just to remain muted, especially while Bobby's doing her presentation. Please feel free to rename yourself, add any distinguishing comment that would help us know where you're joining us from, especially for someone like Bobby, who's maybe a guest today, though familiar with many of you. And as always, Q&A in the chat, we'll monitor that as we go. If we can't get to it during the presentation, certainly during our breakout rooms, we'll make sure to answer your questions. So my little introduction for today is just to share, what we heard last time. So this is our second of 4 communities of practice in digital learning in our gatherings. And so we just had our first one in June, and I remember hearing from so many people now that it is year 2 of the digital learning program, people really wanting to reach more of their clients, reach those who are maybe falling through the cracks. And that was what a lot of the discussion in the breakout rooms talked about was how to bring this program to folks, or how to help other folks find out about their program. your digital learning programs. So, you know, Cheryl and Maggie and I went away and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have somebody come in and talk about social prescribing, because that is one of the ways of helping older adults, clients of yours, to connect to programs and services that they need. I won't say anything more on the topic because I know Bobby's going to open with an introduction to what social prescribing is, give that definition. But I wanted you to know that we heard you, and that's how we landed at today's topic today. So thank you so much, Bobby, for being here, and up to you.
Thank you, Nicole. So great to be here. I see so many familiar faces and new faces, and so just really appreciate being able to spend this time with all of you. I thank you for allowing me to come in as a guest. It's funny to be a guest in one of these COPs because I actually chair so many other ones at United Way. But it's fantastic to actually come in and sit in with you guys today. It is Bobby Symes, and Nicole, it's okay, it's Sims, and it's funny, it's one of those names that's actually pronounced both ways, so it's no fault to you. I answer by both, so it's not a problem whatsoever. Maggie, I'll just get you to go on to the next slide.
I usually ask too. My apologies, Bobby.
No worries,
Thanks for the
no
correction.
worries. Not a worry. I also want to acknowledge that also that you might have seen join the COP today is Esther. And many of you may know Esther. She is a capacity building specialist at United Way. And Esther has supported me on our social prescribing initiative for quite some time now. And so she's joining us today as we go into breakout rooms. I'll be facilitating one, and Esther will be sort of the expert facilitator in the other room. And many of you here today also have social prescribing programs within your own organizations. And so I'm going to call you out as experts too, especially as it relates to how social prescribing might be working within your own organization. So we're here today to talk about social prescribing. And like I said, for some of this might be a new topic. Others, you may have heard the term or maybe even use social prescribing or have made connections and are already part of that social prescribing process. But at its basic level, social prescribing is a powerful, proven community mechanism to improve physical, emotional, and mental well-being by connecting to non-medical community-based supports. So organizations like yourself. While the benefits of social prescribing are vast and the process relatively simple, social prescribing is still an unknown approach to embedding lifelong learning as a resource for living healthier lives. So if I were asked what social prescribing was to mean to you, I'm going to ask you to type it in the chat using one word. What would that word be? So when you hear the term social prescribing, if I were to ask you to sort of put one word in the chat, what would that word be? So I'm seeing work like connecting, helping, connections, community, wellness. Let's just take a moment to put that in. Understanding. Maggie, I'll ask you to transition to the next slide as those are coming in. So I asked the same question of a panel of experts on social prescribing that participated in an event that we held back in February. So this is a pre-summit event for our Healthy Aging Summit. And we asked them too to write down one word that describes social prescribing to them. And I know you probably can't see the words, but I will read them out. They wrote words like trust and love and community and relationships, joy and equity. So pretty powerful words, many of which you guys have put in the chat as well. Powerful, engaging, and empathic words that they chose to write down. And this is a panel of community connectors, physicians, community partners that are all actively engaged in social prescribing. And I want to highlight here that social prescribing, it's not just a process, it's not just a program, it's not a thing, it's a feeling. It is, a way of doing things, in some cases how you're doing them now, but it's not just a program. It's a new way of doing things. And it's a place where a positive emotion can be shown And I just wanted to sort of look at, the what you guys put in comparison to what they put. And it's, for those that are embedded and working in social prescribing, the words are a little less process orientated, and really get to the heart of what it is that they're doing. And I think that's pretty special about social prescribing. Maggie, on to the next slide. So I want to share this video with you guys. And as Maggie launches it, I wanted to find the best way to describe as opposed to define social prescribing. And there's nothing quite as powerful as the spoken word. And so when I found this, I thought I just wanted to share. It's like a little 2-minute snapshot of using spoken word defining social prescribing. So Maggie, I'll ask you to share that. Make sure audio's on.
Okay, I'm gonna try it and let me know if you can't hear it.
Look, we all want to be healthy and happy. That's not an impossible idea, a lie, or a dream. And it may seem like quite an obvious thing to say, whilst we sit wondering whether society would allow us to say we were any other way. You know, that pressure of appearance. Are we allowed to say when we're not okay? Because all too often, physical or mental health difficulties get in the way. Whether it's events beyond our control, personal circumstances, or genetics at play. Because if 1 in 5 GP appointments are for non-medical problems, then this could be a time to explore other possibilities and options. Like social prescription, a system that takes a different approach, where they won't just deal with the symptom, but sit with you to trace it, understand the cause, and then create a plan to replace it. Talking about your health, finances, housing, or stress, before linking you to activities that empower and suit you best. What if you were prescribed a social engagement, a social arrangement, to get a pep in your step, in your feet on the pavement, a brush in your hand, a tune from your lungs, a talk and support to help you manage your funds? I'm talking about a place to feel connected with the community you've selected, making your activities more effective, experiencing as a collective, so you are positively affected whilst feeling safe and protected. Surrounded by new people, allowing you to feel part of something bigger than you. We all want to be healthy and happy. And it's not just a nice idea, but a system that works, that asks if medicine isn't the only option and puts you first. With a wide range of solutions to help you get through, a social prescription can help you too.
Thanks, Maggie. Isn't that a fun video? I think he describes it so well. I said I've tried to bring in specialists to do spoken word at past events, and I just think it's a marvelous way to sum up how we're truly feeling about things. So let Maggie come back to the next slide.
Let me just...
Thanks, Maggie.
No worries.
So let's take a look at how this all works. So social prescribing uses the familiar, trusted process of writing a prescription that refers patients to local, non-clinical services that empower them to improve health and build invaluable connections with their community. So I'm sure that last line can resonate with you. Non-clinical services that empower people to improve health and build invaluable connections with their community. This is what you guys do. You're already part of the system where there is one in place. And what social prescribing does is provide a structured pathway for healthcare providers to address those social determinants of health and help to bridge the gap between clinical and social care. Let's look at the pathway in the middle where it says, how does social prescribing work? A healthcare worker sees a need in one of their patients. somebody that could clearly benefit from community. They need more than a prescription from a bottle. These individuals may be showing signs or admitted to feelings of loneliness and isolation. The doctor uses the method of writing a prescription that they are familiar with, but this time the prescription is to a link worker, or here in BC, we call them community connectors, rather than medication or clinical counseling or some other program from the medical side. The connector or link worker then meets with the person, and together, and this is what's so important about this process, is they co-design. They meet where the older adult is at. They co-design a plan that meets them, their needs, and their interests. And then finally, the connector then assists in making the link to community. And again, this is where you guys come into play. Maggie, just click, because I think I put a little circle around that part. Thank you. And then together, they follow up with that participant on an ongoing basis and ensure that that right fit is made. So this relationship between the connector and the patient, the program participant, can last weeks or months, with the goal of introducing the individual into their supporting community until they no longer need that connector. Maggie, go ahead and click again. And this graphic wasn't mine, but if it were, this is where I would put you guys down there. So you can see that things in community that a connector might have access to or might refer the program participant to are things like art classes and dance lessons, a community garden or hiking group, food security. It could be a local food hub or a hot meal delivery. It can be a bereavement network or a support group, a caregiver or a newcomer support. It can be digital learning, digital literacy. So these are all things that are in your community that a community connector will be able to then refer the older adult to. And like I said, what's so important is these are based on the needs, wants, and interests of that particular individual. And that the link worker or community connector will have an ongoing relationship with this individual until that individual feels more confident to attend and do these things on their own. You can change slides now, Maggie. So we haven't really defined social prescribing yet. We've really just been talking about what it is. But that social prescription can be anything. Like I said, the friendly visiting, it can be a physical activity, it can be arts and music, food and nutrition. It can also be attending classes, learning new things like what your programs offer, your device sharing programs, your digital literacy workshops, your one-on-one group learning programs. In the chat, what I'm going to ask you to do now is to just let us know if you're already working with or are familiar with social prescribing in your community. And this is just going to help us to sort of baseline and see where everybody's at. So you can say things like, yes, working with, yes, but not working with. No, there's no social prescribing program in my community, or I just don't know. So take a moment to put that in the chat. So we're seeing things like, yes, working with, yes, we have social prescribing program in our agency. Yes, I'm familiar, but not working with, not in my community. Yes, working very well. I don't know, but I'm excited to learn. And yes, we have a community connector. Share in Coquitlam serves New Westminster as well. We'd like to have an organization in our community. We're working with Share. So this is great. So we have a really great combination of agencies that have social prescribing. We have organizations in community that are working with a community connector outside of their agency or organization. And then we have regions in the province that don't yet have social prescribing, or maybe just not aware that it's there. Next slide, Maggie. So now that we have a better understanding of what it is, and you can start to see where you and your organization fit into the picture, I just want to give you a little bit of a history on where that's at. So social prescribing around the world. Social prescribing as we know it today was first developed in the UK. And it's, social prescribing as a term has just kind of starting to happen. But as you can imagine, this is happening. You might say our agency has been doing this for a long time. We just don't call it social prescribing. And that's true as well. We totally acknowledge that. This is not a new concept. It's really just a way to just try to formalize that pathway, if you will, because we know that this has been happening out there. In the UK, they really started to term it in the 1990s. And by 2016, the number of the pilot initiatives were growing quite significantly. And this actually prompted the development of the International Social Prescribing Network and Conference. And that now today, in the National Health Services in the UK has incorporated social prescribing into its national model of personalized care. And we're hoping to really try to work towards that in some capacity, not just here in BC, but as a national movement. Currently, there are social prescribing programs developed in 17 different countries around the world, and with similar models of connecting people to non-medical care. Go ahead to the next slide, Maggie. So here in BC, you can see over on the left is like a map of where we have 20 social prescribing programs that from United Way. You can see on the map on the left where they're spread out with that deep pocket mostly in Fraser and in the Lower Mainland. So if you go on the right, that actually is just a zoomed in, so you can actually see that where those programs are in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland and on Vancouver Island. And that's just a list of where the agencies are. So if you sort of look at it, you can see we've got Abbotsford, South Surrey, White Rock, Chilliwack, Surrey, Delta, Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, Mission, Burnaby, Tri-Cities New West, as Joanne had mentioned, Langley. So those are all in Fraser. And I'll kind of give a little bit of a blurb further on in the presentation why there's so many in Fraser. It was intentional. We've got one in the north in Dawson Creek, 2 in the interior in Invermere and Kelowna. We actually have 4 in Vancouver and 1 in North Vancouver, and then 2 on the island. We've got Gabriel Island and Cowichan. So I wanted to just touch base a little bit on, again, how social prescribing can differ in so many different ways. It can be a large national type of initiative, like the Parks for Prescription that you may have heard of. It can be provincial, kind of like what United Way's program is, where we have multiple funded programs that are spread throughout the province. We've got it can be regional. So I kind of talked about what was going on, the way it was set up intentionally in Fraser Health about that regional model and what it looked like. You've got very localized programs, and then you can have really hyper local programs. And then you'll see there, we've got our Gabriola program that's listed as a hyper local because it's a very small community that is all tight knit and comes together. What do I have on the next slide? So this is the Fraser one. So I just wanted to say that back in 2000, I wanted to talk a little bit about where this all comes from. And United Way has based their model on the UK model. And back in 2017, it was at one of our Healthy Aging summits, the community had identified a need to better support seniors that were vulnerable and needing community supports. And I think this is actually in part why we're here talking about social prescribing today, is because you guys also identified the same thing. And we knew programs in neighborhood houses and community centers and other nonprofits that we were meeting the needs of a pocket of seniors, but the staff who worked there in these agencies knew that there were other seniors out there who they weren't tapping into and could not access the centers, or who were not aware of the community supports that were around them. And so one of the recommendations that came from that summit was for United Way to go away and look for other programs around the world that were working. And so we looked at social prescribing model in the UK, and we made a proposal to government to pilot social prescribing here in BC. And that's where the funding actually comes from, to fund the 19 programs that we have out there. So there are 9 in Fraser, and then there are 10 located elsewhere across the province, as we saw on the map previously. And why there's so many in Fraser is because we had an opportunity to partner with with Fraser Health and the regional medical director there at the that's still there, who was a real advocate for social prescribing. And at the time, Fraser Health was rolling out what they called a CARES model. And it's where physicians were identifying using a scale vulnerable seniors. And so what the idea was is that we would embed a community connector in every community in Fraser that aligned with their divisions of family practice, and that Grace, Dr. Parks, and Fraser Health would work with those physicians to help them to identify pre-frail seniors on this new scale that they were rolling out throughout the health authority. And if the seniors or the patients came up as a certain number on that scale, they would automatically be referred to a community connector. And so we wanted to pilot test this model, and that's sort of what you're seeing up on your screen now, in Fraser, to see the benefits of rolling out the health with the health authority support, the CARES model, with a community connector, working very closely with those divisions of family practice. And so we're in the midst of a demonstration project right now of all of those programs, in hopes that we'll be able to share the results of that at the end of the demonstration project, which is the demonstration itself ends in December of this year, and then we'll be doing an analysis of that data and getting the report written out. All right, Maggie, next slide. So here's where I want you guys to start now thinking a little bit about your programs and what you have to offer as it relates to social prescribing, or how you guys could become part of, if you're not already, part of the process. And so I want to just kind of think about this a little bit with a real person. So Shizu, shown here, is 91 years old, and she lives alone. And she has a daughter who lives in Japan. And this is a quote from Shizu: "My daughter lives in Japan. She used to come and see me about once a year and help me, but with the pandemic, she won't be able to come. At my age, most of the close friends have passed away. I have no one to ask for help, whereby sometimes I feel I should be living in a home." So if I were to say that Shizu has been prescribed to a community connector in your community, the community connector has met with Shizu, and they've come up with some goals, and Shizu would love to see and speak to her daughter and grandchildren in Japan. They've talked about using a computer or a tablet, but she just doesn't know how to use that. Shizu would also like to meet people like her and learn new things. And it would be great if she could also participate in programs with other Japanese speaking people. So there are two goals that Shizu and the Community Connector have come up with in the next 2 months. The connector then reaches out to you and asks if you can support Shizu. So I want you to think about this for a minute. And I just want to have a general open conversation about this. You can raise your hand, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. But if a community connector were to contact you and your organization and talk about Shizu and some of her wants and needs, how might your program be able to help Shizu? You can type it in the chat, or like I said, raise your hand and unmute yourself, and let's have a bit of a conversation.
Joanne Maple Ridge.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi. So just down the hallway, we have our digital learning person at our agency. So we have been doing this is connecting Shizu up with our digital literacy staff, and then talk about what is most important for her to learn. And then we would link them up with one of our volunteers who would either go to their homes to teach them, or they would come to our office, whatever they're most comfortable with.
Thank you, Joanne. Anybody else want to offer? Brian, we see you said in the chat, our digital literacy program at OBLT could assist with online meetings with family. Val says set up app or Facebook. Linda, lend her a tablet and sit with her to teach her how to use Zoom and get her connected to her daughter and to other groups she might be interested in. These are all great examples. So what my hope was here, Nicole, I'll get to you in just a second. What our hope was here is, if you already had social prescribing, fantastic. But this we really wanted to socialize social prescribing a little bit more with those that you weren't familiar with it. And so to start to really think about how your agency, how your organization, whether it's digital learning or other programs that you have to offer, how you might be able to support a community connector that might be in your area, or how your programs might be able to actively engage in social prescribing. Nicole, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to participate in the conversation a minute
You're
ago
allowed to
and
do
say, and say that knowing some of these programs here, I think no matter what community Shizu was located in, an invitation to join and participate regularly in the digital learning program would be so beneficial to combat isolation and perhaps get her connected to other programs or services that our agencies are offering and could be beneficial to her well-being overall.
Thanks, Nicole. So I want to end with another video. I'd like you to introduce, as Maggie sets it up, I want to introduce you to Roy. And in this video, Roy shares his story of loss and how social prescribing helped him to learn of new resources in his community as a way to combat loneliness and isolation following the death of his wife. And as we move after this video into the discussion groups, just think about Roy and Shizu, and as a resource and community that a community connector might refer to, what other things that you have to offer for people like Roy and with Shizu. And then we've got some, once the video's done, we've got a few words to say to Maggie, and then we're going to do some work in some breakout rooms around how to further social prescribing in your communities.
Well, I'm Roy Lawrence. I suppose firstly to start with is that I'm 88 years of age, and that I've lived in Tankerton for 21 years. I looked after my wife for her last 8 years, and then suddenly it all came to an end. She died very quickly, within 24 hours, and then I suddenly find, after all the funeral arrangements were made, that sort of thing, I find myself living on my own. I saw my GP. She called for me to come in and discuss my medication. I went along to see her, and at the end of her little interview, she said, yes, carry on as before. And but is there anything else troubling you? And I said, well, I get very lonely in the evenings, particularly because I'm on my own and I've never been on my own before all my life. And to find yourself suddenly alone, it's quite disturbing and depressing, really. So anyway, I said to my GP that I was feeling very lonely and whatever. And she said, oh, there's a group organised by the NHS, which is called Red Zebra. I'll put you in touch with them. So I was delighted, yes. Maria came to see me. We discussed it, and she eventually offered me several groups for which I could join. So I chose 2. And I find it very, very worthwhile. You meet a lot of interesting people. Go to Swalcliffe Library once a week on a Thursday, and I meet some very interesting ladies. And we have some very interesting speakers. We've had, and one recently gave us some tips on basic cooking, which is very useful from my point of view. Yeah, speaking about what these groups have meant to me, what they've done for me. They've introduced me to a lot of different people. This is the problem, that all my local male friends, apart from one, have gone. So that's another reason why I'm happy about joining these groups. Oh, I do feel less lonely. Yes, yeah, I have got. I mean, I've got this. It's nice to have something to look forward to.
Thank you, Maggie. I think we have just a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And otherwise, I'll move it back over to Nicole.
I see someone from Wrench Foundation with their
Yeah,
hand up.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, that's me, Charlotte. Hi.
Hi,
So
Charlotte.
I had a question. So in that video, the community connector was the GP. So it doesn't have to be like a dedicated community connector. We could have like, should I talk to all the doctors about being community connectors or?
Yeah, in that video, that was a link worker. So the GP referred him, Roy, to the link worker, and then the link worker went to his home to work with, with Roy. And that would be very similar to what we do here in BC. Any other comments or questions? All right, Nicole, I'll pass it back over to you. I look forward to chatting a little bit more about social prescribing with you guys in the breakout rooms.
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it. It's a big topic, and you were really able to succinctly put it into focus for us. And I know for me personally, you know, in my own kind of digital learning journey with this group and guiding some programming around digital literacy and learning at Help Age Canada, you know, to me, it's always been about what that enables, which is, you know, connection, access to information, quality of life, empowerment, and so social prescribing is just a great vehicle for that. And I'm really excited that we had this topic today. So thank you. We are going to go into breakout rooms in a minute, as Bobby said, and I think we'll just do 2 smaller breakout rooms. It'd be a group of about 6 and a group of about 7, so that there's lots of chance for conversation. You'll have 2, you will have a facilitator for each room who's really well versed in social prescribing. So Maggie's going to set that up in a minute for us. Hey, I think we are all back. Great. Well, I know what we often do is a really quick, you know, 3-second, 1-minute summary of what we heard in our breakout rooms. Bobby, is there like a quick overview you would give of sort of some of the topics of conversation, interesting insights that you heard?
Well, I didn't write anything down like I was probably supposed to, Nicole, but we had a really good combination of individuals who actually had social prescribing right in their organization. We're working with community connectors, to those that hadn't really even heard of the concept before. So it was just a really great opportunity to share examples, and really talk to communities that were already doing like social prescribing. And it was just really great to sort of see all of the wonderful work that's happening in these communities that go beyond, you know, digital learning, but talking about food security and relationship building, and just really, in some cases, really seeing the want or the need for a coordinated effort like social prescribing can provide. But yeah, it was just, I just really enjoyed the 45 minutes I had in my group. It was great.
Well, we appreciate it. And Esther, I don't want to keep anyone over time, but I will pass it to you with the same question and challenge of brief summary.
So hard. There was so much said, but our group was really engaging. I learned a lot about the work that you do, and definitely see an opportunity in your digital learning projects to empower the people that you have coming in. So you guys are like upstream solving a sense of isolation, a sense of disconnection from the current world by giving people the skill sets to stay current. And then we talked a little bit about too, just the volunteer space, that capacity sometimes. So they want to connect with the connectors, but a little bit of like, but what if you refer too many people to me and I can't handle that? So it's an exciting problem to have.
Thanks, Esther. Maggie, let's pull up the slide deck because I know we're right up against our time here. So I just firstly want to thank everyone for joining us, for your participation in the breakout rooms. If there's any follow-on today, specific questions you have, just reach out to us. We're happy to provide any resources that we can. And so yeah, sorry, I'm going out of order, Maggie. The contact information will be up in a moment. But just quickly looking ahead, stay tuned for an invitation to the next community of practice in November. And then our fourth one will be in about early February or so. As well, core resource for digital learning. And I suspect there's probably some social prescribing resources that could be found on there as well. So just always check out core, lots of new things going up there. Here's our contact information if you need any of us. And with that, I'm just going to wrap us up and say thank you so much. Again, happy to be here. We'll stay on the line if anyone has something burning that they want to stick around for. And otherwise, we will see you in November.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone. Great to connect with you.
Thank you. Bye.